first one we had here in LA since I went to Philippines last. Okay. I had another motorcycle accident.
Oh no.
2 months ago.
Oh no, don't do it.
I took all the skin off. It wasn't as bad as the other one because I wasn't on a big Harley, a 350,000 motorbike. And just got on the Palawan Island, which is a pretty remote island from all the other islands. There's 7,107 islands in the Philippines. So I start off very early in the morning on a Sunday morning. Got there late on a Saturday night. And I rented a motorcycle just before they closed. In fact, they were closed. I talked to them and still renting a motorbike, 125. And so I start off very early at dawn down the island, because this island has very few paved roads, and they have paved segments of the road. It's the way they leach the money, and then they say that they're putting the road in, and they'll put a segment in, and yet pocket most of the money. It's the government there. So by the time I got about an hour out of Puerto Princesa, then the roads started just the sections occasionally, and they would have those sections that had been laid. They use concrete there because if you use blacktop, the rain will just wash it up and wash it away. And what they do is they use big rocks instead of pebbles, and they lay gypsum on top of that, like it's in wallboard, because it's very drying. It's 5 times more drying and toxic than sulfur. So they lay this all on top of the stones, the rocks, before they lay the concrete, or else it won't dry and it'll just wash out. So driving along these sections, the one particular section where I was traveling in, the section that they had just laid probably in the last 2 months, but didn't go back and take the cones away. So when you have to wait for the traffic to finish going one way before you start going. This is one way. That's going one avenue. So I was almost out of the section where it was 2-lane again, unpaved, and the first vehicle I passed was about 2 hours after I had been traveling. A van is going about 100 kilometers an hour, and he doesn't stop. His door clipped my elbow, flipped me over in my bike, so I took all, on the rock and everything. This time I tumbled because I kicked the bike away as I was in the air. And but I tumbled, I still took all the skin off. Now, in that, if you remember the motorcycle accident 2 years ago where I broke the femur and everything, I took more skin off.
She wants to help you heal.
I know, you put some bacteria on it.
Yeah, she wants to get sick for you. This happened this year?
That happened 2 months ago, 7 weeks ago.
We were in the Philippines.
But that healed in 12 days. I put the lime juice on it, the coconut cream, and the honey and the meat. So I did it this time, but I had to go buy the honey. So I went to buy the honey, and I found this great Thai honey in the Philippines. So I'm putting it on this wound, and it's just festering. It's getting worse and worse. Of course, I had the gypsum in it. And they don't have the regular limes there. Their limes are miniature oranges, which are cross between limes and oranges. So I didn't have the benefit of the lime juice to surround the particles of gypsum. So it just kept drying. That's what this dryness is here. It's all the gypsum. This thing was ripped open from here to here.
Wow. What's your gypsum?
Gypsum is a mineral, like sulfur, only it's 5 times more drying. It's what they use in drywall because it's so dry.
You put it on your leg?
Pardon?
You put it on your leg?
It was on the street. It was on the ground. So it got all in there. So I was dealing with that. And then after about 9 days, my leg was getting very, very painful. And the other time I had done that, the whole thing healed. I mean, I had twice as much skin gone, all my arm and everywhere. The last time it healed all in 12 days. Completely healed over. And this, there was something wrong. I thought it was just the gypsum. So I asked this, I was going to change the bandages. I asked the taxi to go give me some raw, thin slices of meat. So he came back, tell me, change the bandages. And he took a look at the honey, and he said, "That's not real honey." He said, "No, they've learned to make a Thai-tasting honey here from a fruit, and they use sweet and low, was aspartame." So I've been putting all of this chemical solution on my leg all this time. Well, that caused, I took insulin from the age of 15 and a half to the age of 22. And whenever I have a massage, there's always lumps and tightness in my calves. My calves have always been very, very large since that time. And if the massage therapist pushed even a little too hard, it was painful. I could hit the ceiling. Well, for some reason, the whole process of this started the insulin leaving my thighs. My calves. And that's what these are. These are insulin dumps and sores. And of course, the gypsum is there too. So.
Okay, you have the ingredients on the honey.
This is primitive land. Nothing is labeled if it's made by man. So the taxi driver immediately went to a farm there, and we got fresh honey right out of the hives. So that the next day was a different subject, but I had already poisoned it. You know what aspartame is?
Yeah.
Aspartame is a poison. And I was drinking it too. I was drinking that honey. So I drank about a cup of it and put probably a half a cup on my leg before I found that. Because it tasted exactly like the Thai honey that I had just left Thailand. And I had just finished that on the plane. So I was going to get some fresh honey here. And I thought, oh, Thai honey here, how great. But they got it tasting exactly like the Thai honey. It's a special fruit that they have, and they boil it to make it with all that aspartame.
But how did you find it was aspartame?
Because I went back and found that. And this fellow also knew what it was made of. Because he had made it himself. There's good money in it. People think, something tastes like honey and it's sweetener. They'll use that as a sweetener, so sure. So, a lot of people say, oh my God, it's festering, it's gone on for 8 weeks now, 7 weeks. What else is there to do? Go to a doctor and get more poisons and then take care of it? I just have to be patient. It's painful at times, it's very, very tight. If anybody gets too near me, they'll probably smell the old urine, because I put the urine on it, and keeps it from going into gangrene. I'd rather not have the fungus work on it because it's too dry and too itchy. So I use the urine and bone marrow. Keeps it from getting too dry. And then it started on this leg. Oh, this leg wasn't damaged. Aspartame. The insulin that was in my calves. Of course, I did most of the shooting of the insulin into this thigh. So most of it went in here, just a little bit went in here, because maybe 15% of the time I shot it into this thigh. And I didn't shoot any into my right arm. I always shot into my left, so I had another one that came out here that went, and then several here that also came out of discharge. And smelled just like the insulin that I had shot up for those 7.5 years. So the point of this is, no matter how careful you can be, there's always going to be something out there that you just need that you're going to miss. And I missed the honey incident and had that happen. And of course, all the fluids in my body, people are going to detox at times. All the old stuff, probably because I had hydrochloric acid it lowers my ability to chelate with chemicals. Most people don't have to go through this kind of thing. Of course, most diabetics do in their later years. This will go to the toes first usually, and they'll get their toes amputated, and then their foot, and then their leg, and then the lower part of the leg, and then the upper leg, usually when they're in their 50s and 60s. So I guess what I have to assume from that then is since most diabetics who take insulin have that kind of detox at that time in their life, that is the time when the body does it. I'm 62 now, so whether this inspired it or stimulated it, I don't know. It could be entirely coincidental, or it could be just that chapter in my life where the body said, okay, it's time to get rid of the old insulin. So anyway, I have no more lumps in my thigh. I can press, no pain. Pain's here, though, in the skin. And it comes out. It's funny. I was looking at, through my electronic microscope, I was looking at the blood that's there, you see, that's crusted like that. And they're actually crystals formed from the insulin. Crystals formed. And they grow. They're actually growing in my leg as it dumps. So, wild what chemistry can do to the human body. Again, I want to stress the point is do not panic. Do not go to a hospital or a doctor because they're just going to put more chemicals in you that you're going to have to get rid of later. And my legs, I can fall. He said this whole thing was really bad all over. Even down on my foot, almost all the sores are down on my foot. There's barely a scab there now. So it's healing. I just have to be patient. Probably another 2 weeks and it will be over. Okay, we're going to start with a Q&A now. Do you have a question?
You said that we should sleep for 3 hours and then get up, eat something, and supposedly that we cannibalize our red blood cells. I ran a web search looking for that, and I couldn't come up with anything. So where are you drawing that from?
Well, when I studied blood analysis, and the higher the ketone level, shows that your body's digesting its own cells as the ketones rise. Of course, the medical profession simplifies it and say, your kidneys are breaking down or your liver's breaking down or something like that. But I found that with a blood test, I could see the blood count lower after 5 hours. So I had an MD that took on 6 people, took the blood every 30 minutes during sleep. And what they had, we put a catheter in the individuals. And we weren't taking out a lot of blood. It wasn't like the hospitals. The hospitals take out 100 times more blood than is necessary. When they take your blood, a tube like this, they use not even a teaspoon of it for the analysis. They just take all your blood. I wouldn't let them do that now that I know that. I would say, you can take a tablespoon, and that's it. And if you need for different tests, then I'll give you 5 tablespoons. If you've got 5 tests to do, but you're not going to take a whole 2 or 3 cc's for every test that you want done when you're only going to use not even a teaspoon. So, because, it takes a long time to rebuild that. Anyway, we saw that the blood, red blood cell level decreased without swelling of the pancreas. Means that, the spleen, so the red blood cells weren't backing up into the spleen, because the spleen is a reservoir for red blood cells. If you have a terrible bleed, we have like 1.5 to 2 pints of red blood cells in the spleen. So if you have an accident, you lose 2 cups of blood or 1.5 cups of blood, you get the blood right back into the system, so you don't become anemic. And of course, if you were a caveman back in those days and had a bleed, you'd be dinner if you were anemic. So the spleen is a reservoir for red blood cells. So there was no increase in the splenic size, so the red blood cells weren't going there. But we measured an average of about 2 to 4 tablespoons of red blood cell loss after 8 hours of sleep. And of course, then it began compounded for people that slept 9 and 10 hours. And it began right at the 5-hour point. Ketone level became very high and kept growing. And the concentration of red blood cells diminished.
And what's the result of that? I mean, if that happens, then what is
You have anemia when you wake in the morning.
Fine.
So, people are, right now, they wake in the morning after 8 hours sleep and they're still tired. So they go for some drug, they go for caffeine or nicotine or theobromine and chocolate to give them a charge, or a heavy sugar to give them a charge. That's no remedy for anemia. Eating is a remedy for anemia. And I told people who wake, I usually tell people, wake during the middle of the night, eat something, and go back to sleep, so that something with protein in it, so that doesn't mean fruit, unless it's, let's say, coconut, but eggs, milk, meat, anything like that, just a little bit, even if it's just a half a cup of milk, that will prevent it. And when we ran the test the next night, with the same people, the ketone level was almost negligent. We've always got somewhat of a ketone level because we break down, cells all the time in the body. So the ketone level was normal, and the red blood count was normal for everybody who ate it. And one person ate an egg, 2 women drank a half a cup of milk each, a couple of men drank a whole cup of milk.
So 1 egg was okay?
1 egg was that was all this one woman needed, to handle hers. I didn't think it would, but it handled it.
So you would probably recommend 2 if you were doing it in general?
Yeah, you're our size, definitely. She was more diminutive. I think she's about 5'1", something like that. It's very small. So if you have a tendency to be hyperactive, a high energetic person during the day, then if you wake up after 5 hours and eat, you're not likely to go back to sleep. It might energize you too much. So I tell some people, wake after 3 hours, eat, and then go to back to sleep for 5 hours. And that resolves it. Okay? Pardon?
That was studying you've done. That's not in any of the journals. So.
No. You're not going to see that because the doctors don't look at anything in a natural perspective. David, do you have a question?
Yes. What do you think about juicing kale, juicing beets, beet greens, turnips, cabbage,
asparagus?
Yeah. What about? Because I know you talk about you've talked in your book, the first book, about you discovered that some of the vegetables have almost medicinal qualities, and you have a list of ones that should be approached with caution, adding them to your juice. What dangers would I be, or what effects or betterments would I be getting on myself by,
overdosing on them? Well, the problem with overdosing is it interferes with digestion, and it could bring on a hell of a detoxification.
You talked about beet juice and...
Beet juice, well, the beet juice is high in sugar. That alone could cause, a carbohydrate detoxification, an old toxic glycogen, because we store a lot of toxic glycogen in our bodies. We can't convert it properly because we don't make the proper insulin. It's not like the chemical insulin like the pharmaceutical houses use, but it still will cause emotional and physical imbalances in sugar levels. So, and when you're using, I'll use a lot more carrot these days to help get the bile out of the body. People who turn orange with the carrot juice, I used to think it was the carotene, also undigested carotene, that if they weren't processing properly, didn't have the bile to process it properly. But when I did skin scrapings on people who had on the palms, they had all of that very orangish cast, I found there was a lot of toxic bile. It was not utilized properly. And very little of it was the carotene. So that's how I discovered that the carrot juice and the carotene in the carrot juice help remove toxic stored bile in the body. And especially happens on yellow people like Asians. Like one girl who was here a little earlier, Elena, when she went on this diet about 3 years ago, she was a normal Asian, very, very yellow from eating all of the rice that requires a lot of bile to break it down into a fat. And because if you're on a diet that you're not eating fat, your body's going to have to convert proteins and carbohydrates into acetates, which are fats. They're very poor fats. And in the Asians, the bile and the acetate mix together and lubricates their skin. So they've got this very yellowish skin. Now, in the last 3 years that she's been on the diet, she's half as yellow as she used to be. In fact, her hands are now almost pink like mine, only the palms are still yellow, orangish and yellow. And I have quite a few Asian patients in Singapore who are on the diet, and the same things happen. In fact, one even looks like a white guy now. So he used to be very yellow.
But what do you think of the kale as adding a lot of that? And
well, like I say, kale is very detoxifying for certain things. So
what about if you just want to add like minerals and to your body? How's it for that? If you're not worried about
like I say, you can use a certain amount of vegetable juice in a day, which is fine. Anything over that, you're not going to get a good base mineral. The minerals that we digest to build the body properly are minerals from animal products. Those we digest absolutely. So if you want to use, and I use the minerals in vegetable juice to help chelate with certain toxins that are in the blood and in the digestive tract, not to add to the minerals for having a good foundation in the body. I use cheese and honey eaten together allows the cheese to be digested and all the minerals absorbed. When you eat raw cheese, unsalted raw cheese, it is impossible, I found by checking the feces, for the human to digest very much of it all, maybe 2 to 5%. So what it does is it acts as a magnet and broom and a vacuum and a sponge and attracts poisons out of the fluid systems as they run through the alimentary canal, the neurological, the lymphatic, and the blood. So the cheese draws it out of those systems as it passes through, as they weave their way through the digestive tract. And then the cheese holds onto it like a sponge and then dumps it out to feces. Now when I check the feces after eating salted raw cheese or cheese made from pasteurized dairy, it doesn't do that. It's reabsorbed. So all those toxins that are absorbed by the cheese are reabsorbed by the body when you digest them. However, I found in my experiments that if I mix cheese now, I got this from a model. I was dating a model, and she was ultra skinny, not quite as skinny as Twiggy, but just about. And she just got into this honey and cheese binge. And she's eating like a pound of honey a day with like a half a cup of cheese. Half a cup of honey with about a pound of cheese a day. And she put on 50 pounds in a month. Whoa. That was great because she calmed down, but she certainly stopped working instantly. Gained 50 pounds in a month. That was a lot. She couldn't stop it. She was so starved and hungry, she couldn't help herself. And that's the problem with a lot of vegetarians. But I was not eating a lot of meat then. I was only eating raw meat 3 days a week and not every day, twice daily. And she was pretty much doing the diet, so it wasn't a very balanced diet. She'd been eating the meat. She wouldn't have gotten that kind of craving. I got a call 2 years ago from a supermodel named Jennifer, and I didn't get her last name, but she called to thank me that all the supermodels that she hangs with are so delighted because they are so balanced on this diet, and they don't have to eat till they get fat or vomit and starve. They can eat, be nourished, and don't have to put on a lot of weight. I said, it's good to have the weight, though, you know. They said, yeah, but at least we feel calm and we don't feel like vomiting and we're not starving anymore. We feel very good and we don't have to be, you know, we didn't have to put on much weight. So
if I want to experiment with other vegetable juices, what do you recommend outside of your usual?
Well, what I say is if you're going to do those things, do it no more than 5% of your juice, and I say that in the recipe book. If you're going to use kale, leeks, or anything like that, never more than 5% of your juice to be on the safe side. There could be athletes who could use 10% of your heavy exerciser, which would be fine. But again, the cheese is to absorb minerals with honey, and the vegetable juice is just to chelate, use those minerals to neutralize the over-acidity in the bloodstream from all the toxicity from the cooked foods for all the years of cooked foods. And there are books out there that will tell the benefits of vegetables. You know, Walker's juice book. He tells the benefit of what some juices can do. Now, I didn't find all of the same when I was experimenting with various vegetable juices and herbs for that short 1.5-year period. I didn't find that it always coordinated with what he thought it did. I think that because I knew Walker, he was more theoretical than experimental and didn't back up. He didn't do the experiments, he didn't do the lab work that I do, that I used to do. Still, I still do some, but it's mainly just looking at a microscope. But I don't go into a laboratory and mix anything. I send those tests to be done now. I don't even walk into a laboratory. So
in one way, you're kind of saying that it's okay to experiment with juices, but you haven't really researched.
Don't overdo it.
When, like, what if I want to make 32 ounces of beet juice and turnip juice and drink it one day and 2 days later? I mean, is that going to help?
It's probably not going to cause a problem. Beet juice, you know, when women drink beet juice and it's near their period, they bleed excessively. Red cabbage juice will do the same thing. Cause severe bleeding. It will also cause ulcerations. The green cabbage will do just the reverse. It will slow down the menses or slow the flow of the menses and heal ulcerations and stop bleeding. So that's what I'm saying. When you take something and you concentrate it, you better be careful with the results. If you do it, just let me know what you experience. I'll take the info.
Okay,
you
but
be my guinea pig.
But because I don't want to take the time to digest salads right now. And you can't digest them.
Why
no? What do you mean I can't?
It takes an herbivore. An herbivore has 2.5 times.
I know that. So I want to experiment with other vegetables right now. I want
juices. Yeah.
In the juice format. And I just was, and I have been doing it. I have been experimenting with turnip and beet and kale and parsley, and I throw celery in there. And it's, I go through phases, and that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And kind of what I'm asking is you know me, I do what I want to. I don't follow anything particularly. But what kind of advice can you throw at me, because I'm going through this phase where I'm still eating the raw meat and the milk and everything. What kind of advice can you throw at me since I'm going through this juicing phase? Where I'm just doing a lot of juicing. I'm like juicing every second 2 or 3 days. I'm drinking like 16 ounces once or twice a day. I feel like I'm putting minerals into my body.
Which is like you said, when your body uses the minerals from the vegetable juice to neutralize toxicity and over-acidity in the blood and the rest of the system, then you can use the minerals in your meat and dairy to rebuild and strengthen your body. But you cannot use minerals. You can, but it's not as healthy. You've got your races are weaker who use a lot of your minerals from vegetation as your base cellular construction needs, whereas the tribes and the animals who use animal tissue, the minerals in animal tissue, and animal fluids like milk to build their systems are a lot healthier, a lot stronger. They handle heat better and everything. So.
I'm getting never refrigerated goat's milk now. I'm getting about.
Wow, terrific.
I'm getting like 4 or 5 gallons every 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and it's wonderful tasting.
Yeah.
And so I'm adding that. So now if I'm adding that, that's kind of taking part of the meat, of the place of meat.
Very concentrated minerals in milk.
So could I maybe cut down on the meat because of the unrefrigerated goat's milk I'm getting?
Explore it and see.
Yeah. Okay.
I've only found 3 women who could live on just raw milk.
Okay.
And with no meat at all.
So maybe I could possibly even eliminate the meat eventually and just go with the raw goat's milk.
You can try it. See.
Well, I still like the meat. I mean,
Yeah.
the meat's very attractive to me. So, okay.
When you never refrigerate the milk, you have the growth hormones that are active. As soon as the milk goes below about 72, 71 degrees, the growth hormones that are in the milk for the calf go dormant. They aren't utilized the same way.
And even if you just leave it out in the animal.
Doesn't make any difference. Once it's chilled to that temperature, it'll never recreate itself.
So the milk at Blossom is good.
No, still it's very healthy. I certainly drink a half a gallon a day. But and when I can, I get the raw milk never refrigerated, but that's a rarity. So I just have to eat more red meat. I mean more meats, fish and chicken. And
I've got a good source if anybody else is interested. About 25
Do they have
cents a
enough?
gallon. Yeah, they can get a lot more if you want to work something out with them.
Well, I'm too thin. When I have goat's milk, I lose even more weight. So for me, it's fine. I only recommend goat's milk for people who are overweight and people who have sugar problems and diabetes.
Okay.
And you might find that you start getting pretty thin.
Which is
if
what
you're
I
just
wanted
drinking goat's milk
Which is
and not
part of
eating meat.
the motivation.
Okay. All right, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Shoot. I do him because my tape player is screwing up. Do him.
Okay, Jim.
It's about water retention. It was a whole lot worse before the primal diet, but I can push on my ankle and it makes it damp, and it gradually comes back and that sort of thing. And it gets worse if I eat cooked food with a lot of salt, but it never really goes away, particularly in the summertime. Is there something else I should be doing?
Well, the trick is not to gulp any dairy, any liquids at all. And if you're going to drink water, it should be no more than, let's say, a sip, a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons at a time. When you gulp your fluids, the body rushes a lot of the H2O to the kidney, and then the nutrients cannot transport the H2O to the cells. When you're eating raw food, you've got all the active ions and everything available to transport, and when you cook a food, all the ions fractionate from the water, so then it's water. It's just water. It's not bound, ionically active H2O. So you will dehydrate by drinking water. That's why I suggest people do not drink water. It's also a solvent. Why do you think people go around hosing things off, washing things with water? Because it's a solvent. It breaks things down, dissolves them. When you have it in your intestines and the rest of your body, it'll wash your nutrients away. It'll destroy and dilute your bacteria. It'll do all kinds of negative things unless you're just sipping. And your body converts that little bit of water into solvents to help dissolve some matter that needs flushing out of the system. but mainly we can do it with the water in foods. Milk is 86% water. Meat's 55% water. Fruits, including cucumbers, are 93% water. That's plenty of water, but you cannot gulp. You gulp, it rushes to the kidneys, you dump it out the bladder, where's your water going? So if it doesn't all go to the kidney and it's rushing into the system too quick, it's going to be absorbed too quick and the body's going to keep it in the connective tissue until it can find some way to utilize it. It's usually if you have a poor kidney and you don't have the greatest kidneys in the world.
So then I should eat slowly as well as...
You should drink. Well, you have to eat your meats and other solid foods slowly, but you certainly need to drink your fluids slowly. Would you hand me my bag over there? Is this one? Yeah. Now I suck. That's what I do.
What about chewing your chews?
You can chew it, but if you do like an infant does, when I put my teeth together, open my lips, I put my tongue behind my back teeth, and I suck. I only consumed about 2 tablespoons of milk just then, but because I sucked it, I got all the saliva with the bacteria. And that's what infants do. They get that bacteria in the milk. We have almost 2 times more bacteria in our salivary juices than a dog and a cat do. In fact, we have more bacteria than any other creature on the planet besides a fly. So, you know, the fly, they'll spit on you and start dissolving your tissue. That's what flies do. They spit on their object that they're eating to start pre-digesting it even before they suck it up. We need to suck. So if you suck your fluids, then you'll have more bacteria in it and you won't be gulping. You won't be as thirsty. When you gulp, rush to the kidneys or the connective tissue and then you're dehydrated. And people who drink and drink and drink. Now, I used to drink a gallon of milk a day. When I stopped gulping, I cut it in half. And then cut out water completely. I used to drink, you know, maybe in the summertime, a half a cup a day, cup at the very most. You know, when I'm in Asia where it's very hot, here it's not. I never drink water here, except for maybe an ounce a week, 2 ounces a week. And that's it.
True. That mineral water too, gulping, same thing.
That's same with any fluid at all. You want to take it in slowly.
Even whey?
Even the whey. Oh my gosh, yes, the whey is 98% water.
Coconut juice?
Pardon?
Coconut juice?
Coconut water, you mean? Coconut water is just water. It's got a lot of minerals in it. It's got a tiny bit of sugar. It's got a tiny bit of protein, but it's basically water.
Like a whole coconut is too much for one person?
In Asia, women do not drink coconut water because it causes them to bloat. It causes them to swell. Men will drink it there without swelling, but women will swell.
With the meat, it's a different story.
Pardon?
The meat is totally...
The meat of coconut?
Yeah.
That's no problem.
The average person digesting the meat.
Well, it's cellulose. It's high in cellulose, so it's hard to digest the coconut for most people. A lot of cellulose. I'm going around the room for Q&A. Okay. Yes.
I've been, like, on the internet, there's people predicting, like, we're going to have, you know, huge food shortages. I just wonder if you got any tips, suggestions, or advice, like if we get into a serious food shortage, how we still somehow, you know, stay on the diet and still
Well,
survive?
it certainly won't be easy. I've got 5 gallons of honey put away. I've got lots of butter, probably 30 pounds of butter, and I keep them recycled in my refrigerator. Some of them are blue cheese, so I make my Roquefort dressing with blue cheese, which is wonderful. I also have meat that I've stuffed and cut up and stuffed in jars, some dehydrated, you know, if I had to carry some that's dehydrated in oil. I did that in That's deer meat. Most of that's deer meat. And I did that in the year 2000 for Y2K in case I never thought it was going to happen. But
Why deer?
Pardon?
Why deer?
Because a friend of mine shot it, and I had to butcher it, and I got a lot for butchering it.
Okay.
I got a third of the deer, so that's what I had on hand. Right. Like you do with any meat. So what you do is just stuff it in a jar with like olive oil, and it coats it and surrounds it. And I've had some beef jerky and oil for almost 10 years. Well, 10 years because I did it in 1999. And I have one jar left, and I will open it in December again. I open one every December and to see how it holds up.
Is all that meat in the fridge, or do you keep it out?
No, it's out.
It's
Never
out?
refrigerate.
Oh.
Never refrigerate. You know, once to the point when I put it in the jars with the olive oil. Now, I tried cooking in oil, but it doesn't quite last as long. That's an odd amount.
You know what, Agnes?
Okay.
We were at the beach, and I just wanted to show him Lucky's place. And there happened to be a gathering. I had no idea. I've never been to one of your talks. I know they're generally here, but I didn't even know that this was today, and we're both foodies, so we don't want to disrespect. We're actually going to take off.
Pretty girls discount.
But I don't want
Don't worry about it.
I don't want to bounce in there, but I'm curious. Can I ask a question before I leave?
You already asked a question.
No, I didn't
No,
know.
no, she asked a question upon the subject you were talking about.
I think this is important.
Okay.
I've been in the world for a while.
Uh-huh.
I've been studying food for a while, and there's a really large gathering this weekend in Santa Barbara called the Raw Spirit Fest.
Okay.
It's about
It's
4,000
vegetarian.
people. It's so ultra vegan. I had a booth there last year for a side business. We weren't selling food. We were selling Thank God I'm Raw, a t-shirt at the company I'm involved in. And I've been to lots of festivals. I've never been at a festival where booth after booth after booth had so much information that I was interested in. And like, this is all about health.
So what's your question?
These raw vegans, like, they look sick.
They are sick.
Right, and we're almost like the amount of meat that you're suggesting maybe a little too much for me, but I've done yours for years. That's how we, and I never felt better. And the raw vegans are just, where's the synergy? Where's the, like, at some point, we're all on the same path. We're not eating the McDonald's, we're not, so where's the synergy? Like, how do we...
Well, if you read my, I don't know if you subscribed to the newsletter, I talked about the raw food event that we had in Hawaii in November, and the woman who put together the Spirit Festival.
Happy Oasis?
Happy.
Yeah, I know her.
A real wired woman.
Yes.
And she was, the guy who ran it was a young Italian boy who found raw foods and helped himself very well.
My fiance. No, not yet. He's straight up.
You're not able.
No, he's Italian. No.
Very fresh. Just the one you had to have.
Italian chef, my fiance. It was not him.
Anyway, he put the thing together and he invited me and my group and people from Australia. So you saw the group of my people who were there, who were good and muscular and all the skinny guys. And of course, whenever anybody on my diet in competition, they won.
Right. You mean like physical?
Yeah, because it was supposed to be the Raw Olympics.
Oh, God.
And that's what it was originally called. And I said, then you're talking about competition, so I got them to call it the Raw Games. Took me a couple of months to get them to change that over. But Happy and the other group they were nuts with our raw meat table. I mean, they went crazy about it.
Where was that?
Crazy, they
were upset? Oh, yeah.
They were very upset.
Oh, yeah, I was in the corner, not because I wanted to hide my ceviche, but because I didn't want to get into a debate about why it was eating raw fish.
There's an awful lot of judgment.
Oh my gosh, I've never been around.
And they started the festivity was, we are here for peace on earth and peace in the world. And then they go into all this judgmental bullshit, you know. So,
And you know how many, I used to walk around with a camera called rawfoodmedia.com and everybody assumed I was a vegan. Meanwhile, I'm on the primal diet the whole time. And I went to New York and reviewed the raw food restaurants. They're all vegan because there is no primal raw. And
Not yet.
It's not yet, right. I have a contact. He's a chef. But so they all assumed, you know, that I'm vegan raw. Oh my gosh, it's not even worth getting into a discussion.
they didn't even let me on the main stage.
They didn't let you?
To speak. They didn't let me on
Really?
See, the guy who's in charge let Happy be in charge, so she didn't let me up on the stage.
Wow.
After it was over and somebody brought that to his attention, I don't give a shit. I was happy to be able to see all of my people wipe all those people out in the competition. In fact, I said, you probably don't want to, involve yourself in too much of the competition because you will steal it all.
Why is it the raw goat milk though? I've had a lot of them, authors that are like, vegan. Well, yeah, raw goat milk's okay.
Well, David Wolf, he's now drinking raw milk,
Right.
and eating raw dairy.
Right, all of a sudden,
And I told him 8 years ago, I said, David, you wait, you're going to hit that 7-year wall, and you won't be eating your diet you're eating. He says, oh, that's not true.
When did you tell that?
I told him that 8 years ago, when I met him in San Diego when he first started gung-ho on the diet. So what happened, 7 years and 3 months, I get a call from some people who work for him in New York, and said he's drinking the raw milk and eating the raw cheese now. He started on the raw cheese first. And he doesn't tell anybody. He didn't mention it at all at that festival in Hawaii.
No, they're asking me on the side. I have the camera, but when they're off camera, they're telling me on the side, it's okay, I do a little raw goat.
Yeah.
I do a little raw dairy.
Yeah. It's sad because there's a lot of people that need those particular vegetarians, raw food vegans, who are scatterbrained because they don't have enough protein. I mean, terribly scatterbrained. And they're not emotionally stable. I remember when I talked to David that week, they came to my table. I was at a Whole Foods, whole life convention in San Diego. And I was there as a raw fooder, raw primal eater with all of my meat and dairy. And this group of 6 vegetarians, David Wolf was one of them, he wasn't speaking because he was new to it. But the guy who was heading, I forgot his name, and he's going on to me, and I'm talking calmly about the situation, why when I did that it didn't work for me, and I had to go to raw protein and lots of animal fats to be stable and to bring myself back. Because I kept getting skinnier and skinnier. I went down to 118 pounds. Without fasting, I was eating everything balanced according to the vegetarian raw food way. And it just did not work. And they're arguing with me, and they all start foaming at the mouth a little bit. When somebody gets angry, they get a little white bubble.
White bubble, right.
Yeah, and even when I was a vegetarian, I get in a heated conversation, I would do that.
You were a vegetarian.
I was a vegetarian for 6.5 years. So I hit the 7-year mark 6 months early. So the 7-year wall. So here they were, and they said, "Don't you know that that's create more violence and everything?" I held the mirror up and I said, "You tell me who's violent and calm here." They really looked at each other and they walked away. They never ever hassled me. This way.
I just came from the Raw Festival. I thought they looked great. Beautiful people.
You were there?
Yeah, I just came home just this morning. I just came back, and I don't see any of what you guys are talking about. These people were great. They had great.
Well, you're talking about very young people on an early raw food diet.
Yeah, anybody's trained as a vegetarian for 6 months, of course. Like, you get more greens than you've
They're
ever
doing
had.
a piece on the silks down there that, I don't see anybody able to climb those silks here in this room. And there are vegans climbing that silk.
Good point.
But I'm telling you, we're talking
I'm so
about
sorry
people
that I
who haven't
cut
been on it very long.
Yeah.
Like David Wolf, it took him 7 years to hit that. The people who stay on a raw food, vegetarian diet have an attrition rate of 92%. That means 92% of the people who are on a raw vegetarian diet drop out
I don't understand.
because they can't sustain it. 8% can.
Seriously?
8% can.
Oh, 8%.
And those are the few people who can do that
The ABs?
for a while. Look at David Wolf, the amount of energy he used to have. And then the less energy he got, the more he go into superfoods.
Right.
Chocolate, theobromine, caffeine, all these foods to charge him because he had no energy. So, and that's the way it is. If you had been to the Hawaii festival, almost everybody was long-term vegetarian, very weak.
Yeah, there's a picture. You sent me a picture. The picture is amazing because I thought the Aajonus took this picture to make this guy look good and everybody else look skinny. But it was actually taken by
The Honolulu paper.
Yeah.
Honolulu
Wait,
paper.
make everybody else look skinny and him look healthy?
No, it wasn't him. It was...
You
When
thought
I did on my diet for 3 years.
right, you thought he had to pay the
Yeah, I thought he framed it.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's that photographer worked for Pahoa Paper, on the paper out of the Big Island of Hawaii, and she was standing on the side and watching the line of runners go, and my runner just happened to be right in the center. He's got all these muscles, he's running, everybody else is skinny, and he's taking off.
Yeah, that's a great picture.
Yeah, it's a great picture. It's in my newsletter, one of the newsletters. I think December newsletter.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just ask one more thing on my question about the food shortage? Because I've heard you have like a crossbow and stuff like that. Or had
A what?
a crossbow.
Yeah.
Would it be realistic for city people like us to, like if all you can get is canned stuff, could we, like living off the land to some degree, or eating, there's books on how to pick out edible plants and distinguishing from
Yeah, but you're not going to do very well. I mean, if you want a lot of energy on that. But the people in Asia and third world countries who don't have meat, and they, in Africa, they're just killing everything, monkeys and eating everything. And it's like that in every country where you've overhunted and there's not much species left except for insects. So, in China and all of Asia, they raise insects, big cockroaches this big that they eat, scorpions, they eat everything of a nature that has animal tissue to it. Well, you women are used to eating cockroaches anyway, cockroach guts. That's what all lipstick used to be made of up until 15 years ago. Because it was
the last reason a restaurant was now the 4 years reason a restaurant was just all scorpions or insects.
Yeah, right.
The raw, the fries.
Because it's hard to get meat. Everything's getting lower. The fish, we don't have the animals the creatures we used to have, so you have to go to whatever's available. So a lot of people are going to insects. But the cockroach has a white gut in it. It was the only thing that would adhere to skin. So if you saw the lipstick factories, they had miles of trays upon trays, one on top of the other, raising roaches.
Yeah.
So they would kill somewhere around 60 million cockroaches a year for their fluid, and then they put dyes in it to make it color. That's what lipstick was made of. That was the 60% of the ingredients. That was 60 to 70% of the ingredients of lipstick. Now it's all chemical.
We were better off with the roaches.
Pardon?
We were better off with the roaches.
Absolutely. But it's chemical. Yeah. But I was just saying, you've already had a head start on eating cockroaches. Should be happy. Anyway, there's lots of things. I shoot my gophers and eat them.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Eat my plants.
Would you eat a possum?
Yeah, I eat possum. I eat a raccoon. I breed Indian. I don't have a problem as long as the animal's healthy.
I don't never try, but
I've eaten,
I tried turtle or another white animal, like a snake.
Yeah,
The crocodile meat, was really, really good. On the turtle stock, it's really, really good. It's a nice mineral.
I mean, if you want to really have a lot of meat, you want to have a factory, raise crocodiles or alligators for meat. I've got a friend in Thailand who's got a crocodile farm, and she started off buying 3,000 babies, and she built these rock, about the size of this room here, and she puts a couple of hundred in each one, and then she has a chicken farm, and she takes the chickens and feeds that to the alligators. The crocodile. So she gets to sell the skins for, boots and belts and hats and stuff like that, and purses, plus the meat she sells to the restaurant. Because they eat alligator and crocodile.
Which answers to your sustainable
Right. Now
animal.
out of all of my search through Asia for the most easiest farming to do are the crocodiles and chickens.
Wow.
Easiest to farm.
The white meat, the crocodile white meat is really good.
Yeah,
Deliver
it is.
big chicken and
You guys are really slowing down the pace of what's happening for everyone else.
Yeah, we need to get on to this.
Yeah, everyone's waiting on their question.
Well, so you heard enough?
Yep, good.
Okay. Roger, do you have a question?
In the wintertime, you can't get, fresh salmon. You have to, frozen, or you have to go and farm raised. Now, the frozen doesn't taste as good, but is it?
It's much better than the farm, because the farm is mainly chemicals. In the farms, what they do is they go to Purina, General Foods, and they buy their waste products that have all been chemically treated. Now, right now we have 60,000 chemicals in our food that are used to process food. And, a lot of people say, oh, well, it isn't in the food, we used it to process the food. If you soak your, let's say, peaches or whatever you're eating in kerosene is natural, and they call it natural, and you rinse it off after soaking it for 20 to 30 minutes, do you think there's going to be any kerosene in that food? Absolutely. So all this processed food, that's what they feed to these fish. Now when the fish were first coming out of the farms, they were gray. Salmon was gray. It was so toxic. So the food industry paid the University of Washington in the state of Washington to make a food dye that they could feed to the fish. And they wanted a food grade. It is a food grade, but it is not assimilatable in the cells, but it colors the meat. So you're just getting food coloring and very, very anemic, sick fish. Anything that's farmed.
How about the frozen fish?
The frozen, like I've said in the workshops before, in my laboratory experiments with animals, if I fed them frozen meat, they all got skin disorders. That's the only thing I fed them. The animals that ate the same meat unfrozen got no skin disorders and they were fine. So there is a breakdown with freezing. I found, however, though, that northern fish don't sustain that same kind of reaction that animals eat it. They don't sustain it. But let's say salmon caught from a river in Washington, Oregon, or something like that, if you freeze it, there's a problem. A salmon caught in the rivers in Alaska can withstand and not have the same breakdown from freezing. So it gets specific and particular.
Which is why that's supposed to be frozen fish every.
Yeah, but still they have a shorter lifespan than the animals, than the tribes that eat raw in a tropical warm environment, because they're all eating this frozen food. I mean, when I was with them, they cut a hole that was 1.5 feet thick into the ice to fish, and by the time they got the fish out of the water to their mouths, it was already popsicle.
Wow.
And they have great teeth. Can you imagine being able to bite on a solid piece of ice like that that's already a hard, and they could chew on bones. I've got a patient in Thailand who grew up in the north of Thailand. She's about 52 now. She went on the diet about almost 8 years ago, and she was in her late 40s at that time, looking, Asians that eat a lot of grain, shrivel up and shrink a lot because they don't have animal fats. And she was looking, like maybe she was 60, even though she was in her late 40s. Now she looks like she's early 40s, late 30s, only on the diet for 8 years. But she eats everything raw, and her boyfriend is on the diet. He's American. She does even better than he does. He still eats a little rice. She won't even touch cooked rice now. And she's more vital and vibrant than he is. We went, so I was just there in November before I went to Hawaii, and we went spearfishing and got a bunch of fish. I didn't get any. It's not easy spearfishing. You've got those waves, and that was my first time spearfishing. And you've got to cock that bow, which is very difficult, in the water, up against your chest or your leg, and man, it was difficult. And then you've got to be able to catch that fish. You've got to just wait for it to get in the right position. Then you have to know it. I never shot it underwater, so of course the delayed timing of the shot, was the fish was already down by the time the arrow got past him. But anyway, got some pretty big fish. He got some pretty big fish. He's a very good spearfisher now. He's been spearfishing for 10 years. One fish had vertebrae this big. And I went back the next day to see them, and she's chewing on these vertebrae. I thought, maybe they're kind of soft. So I asked for a piece. She gave me a piece. I worked an hour on it without even dissolving any of it. And she's just biting away like it's, like some kind of a soft candy. So after about an hour, I put a little bit of honey in my mouth and dissolved it in 5 minutes.
No way.
Yeah, dissolved it in 5 minutes. I realized when I eat my bones, I'm going to have to have it. But can you imagine eating the bones and your teeth being that good, and the Eskimos' teeth being that good, that you can chew on bones? Shit, I've never been able to do that my whole life. Yeah, even now, even as healthy as I am, of course, after the radiation therapy, all the bone around my teeth dissolved, so my teeth hung in my gums. So if I bit on my own teeth, I bled. I was getting a couple transfusions a week for that. And then when I started drinking the raw milk over the next year and a half, all the bone grew back around my teeth. So I had most of my teeth. I lost about 5 of my teeth. The ones back here. So, she has these great teeth where she can chew bones. That's spectacular, phenomenal. And all the tribes can do it. The Eskimos can do it. I'd love to have teeth like that. So, to answer your question, it has to be specific northern caught Alaskan or Norwegian fish.
Well,
that are
at the
freezing.
meat market, they tell you that they catch it on the boat and they freeze it right away and blah, blah, blah. Is that supposed to... But it doesn't taste as good.
No, it never tastes as good. Frozen meat never tastes as
In
good.
your book, it says frozen the same as cooked.
Yeah, well, not quite the same.
But
Yeah, but it's better than not. It's better than not having any meat at all.
my baby's apologies. I'm so sorry we interrupted. I've never been to the forum. We'll come back with a dish to share. I'm sorry. I love you, Aajonus. Sorry.
Take care.
Thank you.
I realized we interrupted. I'm sorry. Okay. Next time we have plenty of food for everyone. We'll make up.
No problem. Have a nice day.
Okay, so now there are some farmed fish that are okay. They're not really farmed in any other way other than they'll farm oysters, clams, and scallops. Now all they do is put a fence out in the ocean and call that their farm. They don't feed it anything differently than what's in the ocean. They just die when they try to do it any other way. But what they may do is they'll go over and rip a little oyster or clam or scallop, a shell, off of the mother or the parent and then planted somewhere else, because if they're left to be in their own soil, in their own area, attached to their own rocks, they grow and develop larger. So that's the only thing they do differently. So farmed scallops, oysters, and clams are okay. Unless they're from the Gulf of Mexico. Then you don't want to touch them. It's very polluted there. If you're eating butter, good raw butter, unfrozen butter, it will help reverse the bad effects of frozen meats. So only with the animals that I fed, only the raw frozen meats had the skin disorder. And when I fed them raw butter, I took that group that had the skin disorder, split them in two, and fed them raw butter, frozen and non-frozen. The ones who had the raw butter, because I know that raw butter will reverse any kind of skin condition over a period of time. So, and depending upon the quality of the butter, of course. So the animals that I fed the frozen butter took 5 times longer to heal their skin condition than the ones that ate the non-frozen raw butter. So you have to take a look at that. Sally Fallon and her stuff about freezing your meat gets rid of the parasites. Show me a parasite in it in the first place. There are no parasites in it. Unless you sit them and let them rot, for a while. Of course, parasites are going to eat them. But the parasites are not toxic parasites. They eat the meat to digest it, to recycle the meat. And if it happens in us, great. They just make our job easier of digestion. Okay, do you have a question?
Yes,
Barbara?
I do. Okay. My question is that we have various laws in effect that, like Codex Alimentarius. Yes. We have various laws coming into effect, such as Codex Alimentarius, which to me is pretty scary because it removes the right that people have to use foods to help themselves to heal, like cherries for gout or simple stuff like that. And yet it seems to be being foisted upon us through the back door.
It has. The agriculture and the chemical industry has been pushing this for a long time. All of the morons, except for Ron Paul and Wexler and Kucinich, there are only 3 out of 537 congressmen that have any integrity at all. All the rest of them are just there doing their thing. When I was lobbying 2 years ago, in fact 2 years ago this month, for raw milk, I even had the senators' aides asking me if I wanted a bill, I had to give them money. Everything is money. Everything is about money. Ron Paul, I went in, they said, when do you need the bill written? Just like that. I said, well, we need to get enough supporters first, so let's get enough supporters first. And I got 78 supporters, and then when the bill was written, not one of them co-sponsored. And we called everyone and say, hey, you promised that if we got somebody to write the bill, you co-sponsor it and support it. Not one of them did. They're all just liars. They're in the pockets of big money, period. That is their issue. And you have to understand their lives are threatened. Their lives are threatened. They use the Kennedy as an example. Kennedy's as an example. Bush and his crew in the military, and the big families murdered Kennedy. They use that as a display. So, of course, these senators have no balls, because they don't want to be like the soldiers they sent off to war. They don't want to jeopardize their life for their values, for any other value. So they're just hypocrites. I have no respect for any of those 3. They're being pushed, and there's no way you're not going to get it. I saw dances that were going on that just made me angry.
Dances?
Did you see The Shooter? Anybody see The Shooter with Mark Wahlberg?
Oh, yeah.
The sinners, annihilating these tribes and everything in Africa to get oil pipes in. And at the end, they almost killed him, and they killed him after he has been part of that troop or that organization who was mercenarily paid to go in and kill those people and then kill the people who did the killing so nobody knew anything, to get rid of the evidence. So at the end, the senator, this guy, this retired Marine, goes in and he's just going to kill them all. He kills the general who's in charge, and he kills the senator. He goes in and catches them in their hideaway home, and they're bragging about how they're doing all this stuff, and he just goes in and kills them. And he says, "You can't do that to me. The senator's the last one to be shot." He said, "I'm a sitting senator." And he said, "Exactly." Boom. Like that. After being around the Senate, that's just what I want to do. Because what they say is, they have an agreement. They all agree whether a bill is going to pass or not. So they get so many people saying, you vote for it, but we'll always have enough not to let it pass. Or we have a bill that we want passed, and we'll have so many people go against it, but always enough for it to pass. It's a political thing. They play that game there, and I saw it. So how much voice we have? I say we have very little.
What do we do to defend ourselves against that type of a thing?
You have to take yourself out of the commercial realm. Government has jurisdiction only over commerce. So that's why I've set up all of those, the right to choose healthy food with all the farmers. The FDA has no jurisdiction over us taking anything over state lines. Because if you look at the law, they have jurisdiction over commerce. When we privately own the farms and the dairy and the herds and the flocks, that is our food. It's not for commerce. We can take it over the state lines if we want. So that's how we have to do it. You have to get as many farmers as you can into it. Now, I've been trying to work with Sharon for 3 years on it. She still hasn't done it. And the law just keeps going after her.
Sharon who?
Sharon, the woman who supplies our eggs and whole chickens. Pardon?
Healthy Family Farm.
Yeah.
Well, why is she stopping to go against? Why doesn't she work?
She does not have a clear thinking about it. She's just in fear of the law.
But if we had public-sponsored campaigns, don't you think that would help take some of this money out of the politics?
No. No, it wouldn't, because these people are real greedy.
So they would get the money and the...
Absolutely, they're very greedy. They were trying to get money from me.
Well, I know that, but, I mean, Congress...
And it was Obama's. It was Obama's, before he referenced 2 years ago. It was Obama's office where the guy was trying to get the money from me. The first one that tried to do that to me. Obama's office. That's the situation we're in. He's just a Yale, a Harvard grad. He's one of the boys. He's doing nothing. He gives the money to the bankers, welfare for the bankers like they need it. Do you have a question?
Not great.
Okay, do you have a question?
My dog, Mandy, the little blonde one, has been on a raw meat and raw vegetable diet her whole life. She's had
Raw vegetable?
Yeah, raw.
Why would you give a dog vegetables?
Oh, good. Well, it's mixed in with the organic raw meat.
Not a good idea. It's going to neutralize a lot of his acids. So he's going to digest maybe 65% of it instead of 100%.
Well, okay. She has not been feeling well, so I took her in, and they said her blood sugar was so low that it's good if she has a glucose-secreting tumor in her pancreas. And then I went in for an ultrasound, and there was nothing in her pancreas, but they did see that her liver was inflamed as if she has hepatitis. So now I've taken her off the raw food diet, and I'm cooking it now, because that's what they suggested that I do. And she's also on immune supporting herbs and carnivore and Manuka honey.
So sad for her.
So I was
Just take the vegetable out of it. If she's not digesting, she's not making her pyruvate properly with the vegetation in there.
so if she just goes on a straight raw meat,
Raw meat, butter, a little honey.
what do you feel about Manuka honey? Does it make any difference?
I've never found a Manuka honey that's truly raw.
To the avocado ones, you don't have butter.
I mean, for the dog,
Yeah.
it's okay. It's not an animal product like and dogs and cats need almost pure animal product. Dogs are scavengers. They will eat all kinds of fruit. They won't eat vegetation out of the wild, but they will, except for chewing on some grass and then spit out the pulp. And that's very, very little. But they will eat dates. They'll eat avocados if they drop it on many. I've seen the wolves and the coyotes. They'll eat dates all day long. But and then when they get too sugared out, then they'll go for the moles and everything else. But they're mainly meat eaters, animal product eaters. Just give them dairy and then meats. Well, you put vegetation in there, and they're not going to digest the proteins to make the pyruvate. Pyruvate's the protein sugar.
Yeah, you said that she wasn't getting the nutrients from the food, and it's just going right through her.
Wasn't going through her. It was not digesting thoroughly. And that's why you put I tell everybody else, don't eat vegetation with your meals, your raw meals. If you're having a cooked meal, fine, have a raw vegetable salad with it, it'll help. But if you're having a raw meat meal, you do not want vegetation with it.
So you should eat your salad in one sitting, or not eat salads?
Not eat salads at all. Have vegetable juice. If you're going to have a salad, then you have it the last meal of the day.
I have a similar question to that, which is meat mixed with cheese in any form, or bone marrow mixed with like raw cottage cheese.
That's all meat. That's all compatible.
So bone marrow you can mix with raw cottage cheese?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are animal. I mean, unless you're Jewish.
Well, I'm Jewish also, but that doesn't matter. But so I could, in other words, I've been making this raw custard with the bone marrow and raw cottage cheese and
Great, it's fine.
honey and lemon and onion.
Honey and lemon?
A little bit of honey, tiny bit of honey.
I mean, a little bit of lemon.
Little fresh lemon, no good.
How much?
About a tablespoon.
And how much cottage cheese?
I have 2 pounds of bone marrow plus about a cup of cottage cheese.
Okay, that's all right. That's not right. Cause a problem. If it's only a tablespoon of lemon juice, that's okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. The lemon juice, yeah.
I prefer, if you're going to use a digestive aid, use pineapple rather than lemon.
Okay. Good enough.
It's a little bit better. Contains some bromelain. The lemon juice is a fermenter. It helps increase fermentation bacteria. That'll help break down the cottage cheese, but in the bone marrow, you don't necessarily want it involved in the bone marrow. So I would mix the lemon juice with the cottage cheese and then put the bone marrow in. That's the way I would do it. You don't put the lemon in.
So just substitute a little pineapple for the lemon.
Or you just eat a piece of pineapple, after you finish the meal or in the middle of the meal. They'll increase that. Honey's good. It helps increase as long as you don't have too much.
Well, even a meat meal, you would eat a little pineapple?
Yeah.
Pineapple better than papaya?
Yes. It's almost impossible to get non-irradiated papayas these days. These people who are, and I'm telling you, these people are working against us being healthy. Papaya, let me tell you what papaya does. My mother got cancer about 7 years ago of the breast. She called me and she said, I'm going to have a lumpectomy and I'm going to have pinpoint radiation. I said, Mom, why are you going to have a lumpectomy? Are the lymph glands that you're going to remove, are they as hard as rock? No, but that's where it can metastasize. I said, Mom, you're a nurse. The lymph glands clean the body. Of course you're going to have cancer cells in any lymph gland. You have them removed, and where's the cancer cells going to go? If you don't have lymph cancer, it's going to go into the mammary gland. Absolutely, without question. Plus, you're going to have pinpoint radiation. What's behind your breast? The lungs. Oh, pinpoint, very accurate. Won't harm my lungs at all. I said, get a guarantee and get it in writing. She was on oxygen for 5 years. That's how pinpoint they are. Medical profession is so full of bullshit, it just makes me angry. Okay, so my mother, after that, at the end of that 5 years later, when she started to get off the oxygen, she got a new hearing aid implant that's implanted under the skull in the brain. They gave her tons of antibiotics, so she stopped digesting. I got a call when I was in Asia. I'm on my way back, just happened to be that day leaving and returning home. They said my mom's going to die, any day, and to come. And I said, well, it's going to take me about, 32 hours to get there because I'm all the way in Bangkok to get there. So I was in Singapore. So I had to fly all those, 30-some hours to get back to Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio. So got back there, and she's skinny riddled. She just stopped eating because of all the antibiotics. They didn't take her on. They kept her on the antibiotics. 6 months on these antibiotics. Of course, she's not digesting. So I made a custard. I gave her a half a cup of custard. She ate 4 meals that day. The next day, ate a half a cup of custard. Ate 4 meals that day. And we're not talking raw foods, except for that custard. The next day, she wouldn't touch it. I put a lot of butter in it. So. And she was nauseous from the butter. Obviously, her liver had been damaged from all the antibiotics. So I just gave her a half a cup of papaya. Every day that I gave her, she ate 4 meals a day. I said to my father, now I say, I have to go now, and you can see if she's eating, and you've got to give her this papaya every day. So I leave, and my father gives me a call 5 days later. She's not eating anymore. I said, are you feeding the papaya? No. Hello? Papaya helps digestion so well that they're irradiating all sources of it because they don't want you healthy.
So including the ones that are buying the things, it's no good to buy them.
Let me tell you, I found some of them were actually irradiated. And you can tell they are irradiated because they shrivel up on one part where they're exposed to the radiation. So as they sit, if the thing shrivels up evenly all over, it wasn't subjected to radioactive material. But when and I let mine, if I have one, I let it go till it starts shriveling. If it shrivels in one spot, I don't eat that papaya. But I have to let it go to shrivel point. You have to understand they're out to kill us. They want to make us sick. They believe in overpopulation. If you read the report 200 of the Henry Kissinger report on overpopulation and all the ways to get rid of overpopulation, and they want to get rid of 4.5 billion people. They do it through medical injections, and poisoning the food source. Those are the plans in that document. And the NSA adopted them in the 1960s. So they've been behind that plan ever since. The only way we can protect ourselves is get farmers growing food specifically for us. And then to make sure they're out of the government pit. Can't get sharing out of it.
Would you have to do a lot of paperwork?
It's very little paperwork. It's 2 simple contracts. Easy as that.
Why can't you do it? There's no time.
She's got Sally Fallon's attorneys telling her one thing and me telling her another. Sally Fallon's lost a lot of battles. I have not lost one in court because they have no jurisdiction. But you have to understand, so attorneys make a pledge and vow to the court. They don't make it to the Constitution. So your attorneys will never work if a judge debars them. That's the end of it.
What is it that Sharon's not doing?
She's not entering a contract. She wants to sell at farmers markets and do all that to the general public. And if she does that, she has to make everybody she sells to a member of the club if she wants to be out of the commercial end of it. And she cannot sell anybody that is not a member of the club. So she wants it both ways, so she can't have it.
But she only has 15 markets.
Pardon?
She's selling in 15 markets.
That's not enough to, with this new acquisition of property, there's no way she can sustain that property. She's going to go bankrupt.
Well, I hope not.
She's going to go bankrupt if she's relying upon those 15 markets for her income. There's no way she can make that kind of money. So, the debt is too outrageous.
So what is James going to do?
And I warned everybody. I warned everybody who got involved in it. Don't do it. Not set up. She's not set up for it. She doesn't know what she's doing.
So what is James going to do if he goes bankrupt?
Who knows what James will do? James is off on his trip too. None of them know what to do. I'm successful, and yet these people, it's like your own family, how your own family doesn't listen to you. My own family doesn't listen to me. Do you have a question?
Yeah. For about 4 months ago, I started having lower right quadrant pain, sort of in the cecum area. It was a little swollen.
Cecum's way down here.
Yeah, it was like, it's actually right in here. So
That's appendix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Swollen, waves of pain coming across the stomach, and then afterwards, every 15 to 30 minutes, I would urinate dark orange. I've been fairly, no fast food, none of that I haven't done for years. I grew up on that, but I was eating only fresh fish and vegetables, lots of green juice, and I basically I started eating pork, natural pork, Whole Foods, and I just had this intuition that maybe it was uric acid, something like that being processed down here, and my body was getting it out, so my family wanted me to go to the emergency room, and the doctor was like, no way, right? So I went through 9 days going on the internet before I came across you, and went on to this guy who's a natural hygienist here, and he just says to just lay down and fast.
Dr. Bass?
No, Bass is where I found your article. But first was Dr. Burnoff, and he just said drink water and just rest and close your eyes, put your hand on that area. So I did that, but the pain wasn't going away, but I'd feel not horrible if I did that and slept. Anyway, and just drank water for about 8 or 9 days, a little bit of citrus here and there. And then it started to break around the 9th day. Then I got onto Dr. Bass's website, and I read your article, went on, and so I started going and getting fish, cheeses, different things. About a month ago, it came back, but not with chills and sweat and where I'm hurting, more like pain there. Like my body's continuing.
Sounds like your appendix. Okay, so the appendix is the library of all foreign matter that's ever entered the body and what to do about it chemically. So that appendix is a very important little organ. Sometimes people will store a lot more toxins in that appendix than they should, and it will burst. But it is a very important organ to have. Yours was probably trying to detox.
Right.
It had too much stored in it.
Still, I was afraid they'd cut it out. I want to cut it out if I
Yeah.
went to the doctor.
But what you do is, when you have a situation like that, you eat a tremendous amount of cheese and clay.
Clay, okay.
Now, if you want to make sure that if there are heavy metals involved to neutralize some of those heavy metals, you have a mixture, like I'll make a mixture of like a half a cup of whey with about ounce to 2 ounces of liquid moist clay that's the same thickness as freshly made plaster of Paris.
Okay.
And then I will add 1 to 2 tablespoons of vinegar to that,
Okay.
a couple of tablespoons of honey,
Okay.
maybe just 1, but most often 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of honey, and then coconut cream, like 3 tablespoons of coconut cream and 2 tablespoons of dairy cream.
Okay.
Blend that together, and then I sip that
Okay.
for maybe the whole day, or if I've got heavy pain, like for this,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't wait till I got home to start eating the clay. And all of this subsided very rapidly because I had enough clay and nutrients to get in there and help chelate with that, so not all of it had to rupture my skin.
Okay.
So it cut the breaking of the skin down, because I started breaking all over.
Right.
And when I started eating that mixture, only 2 broke out after that. 1 here,
Right.
and well, that was it. Just 1. After I started eating that mixture, only 1 broke here.
But what kind of clay?
Yeah.
Terramin clay.
Terrible.
Terramin. You can go to terramin.com. Not terraminclay.com. It's terramin.com.
And I read your book, The Tomatoes with Honey, and then the lime juice. That helped.
That helps.
But I'm seeing, I was drawn to coconut cream automatically,
Yeah.
and just lots of fat that I would get down here on the street. Also.
The vinegar, the raw pasteurized apple cider vinegar, has the same amino acids that they use in chelation therapy. Why don't they use vinegar for chelation therapy? Because there's no money in it.
Right.
You can do it on your own.
And then another question I have is, where would I study iridology? Could you recommend it?
I created my own because I didn't like what. Yeah.
Okay.
Because what I saw in people wasn't what I was told,
Okay.
so I developed my own. So
So if we do a consultation, we could talk more about that. Maybe if you could just give me a couple pointers or something.
I mean, that's a whole study in itself.
So should I just start looking on my own? What
You
you
can,
did?
yeah, start
Okay.
finding people that have conditions and see what shows up in the eye with people with similar conditions.
Right. Okay. Got it.
You my buddy?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Yes. It's an environmental question, or it's 2 of them actually. I'm having insulation done in my house, and I want to know.
Insulation
The insulation.
in the walls or where?
Yeah, well, that's part of my question is, how should I do that? Because right now we can heat and air conditioning, and I want to have insulation, and I know they have different materials and they have different stuff, and I just wanted to know if you have any recommendations. Or
Old torn up jeans. Literally. A lot of green communities are taking jeans that can't be resold, and they're so to the point of wearing out. And these secondhand stores don't sell them. They're throwing a massive amount of them away. And these green community, like in Earth Haven in North Carolina, are insulating with jeans, and it works wonderfully. Also, you could take straw and put that in there, but it could be a fire hazard.
Yeah, I would say no on that one. But,
Denim doesn't have the same fire-burning ability as straw. But straw will,
so obviously,
insulator.
nobody here has any recommendations as to who I can go to for that.
Sustainable building. You just do a Google search for sustainable building. A lot of those things will come up. If you also put sustainable building, insulation, so you get plenty of ideas.
But a lot of that sustainable building stuff is really toxic stuff. It's recycling.
No,
If I can find the
there's
jeans.
some that you can find. If you go to Cal Poly and Physical website, you'll see what professors have done on their own that are outside of the profession because the industry doesn't allow it. But there's articles, tons of articles that you find. And there's real good ones. Speed is a good one. There's a couple more out there.
Okay, so just don't use that other stuff.
Like I say, denim's the best. You can find
No,
other
you don't use
natural
that.
straws that you can mix with clay and put it in there. And that would keep
I
it
just
from
need
being
someone who can
burnable.
do it.
Pardon?
I need someone who's going to do it, too.
There's a lot of sustainable people in this town which will come and do it to get the experience. There's a fellow named Larry Santori. I took his class on sustainable living and permaculture, and he puts groups together who like to do things naturally. and they'll do it on a weekend or a week, and he gets volunteers to get involved in it so they have their first-hand use, and they'll come in and they'll explain how it's done. They'll charge us $1,000 one day to tell you what to do. That's it.
Okay, and then the same vein, I need to get a new mattress, and I wanted to know, because I know mine has all kinds of features, so I want to know where to get a mattress or what to do.
I had mine made. I went to his futon place, and they manufacture them in San Francisco, just a futon place on La Brea. And I, said, I want you to get organic cotton and organic wool, weave it together like you normally do. I want an 8-inch futon, and plus I want all cotton, organic cotton material. And they said, that we can't get. So I went to an organic cotton place that has heavy upholstery fabric, and I got a corduroy, a very fine corduroy material, and I gave that to them, and they set up San Francisco and made my 2 futons. For my box spring, I used all-natural rubber box spring.
Yeah, I need a box spring.
Because I don't use metal because I hear radio stations at night and sleep on metal.
Where did you get the box spring?
I had it made. But there are companies that make all-natural mattresses. It's just all rubber. It's actual rubber latex mattress. And they have holes in it. Lori and I got one with Lori. And Lori and I slept on it. It was so hot. We both perspired so much. We had fungus growing out of it. So we used it as our box spring and then had the futons made. And they're wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, Kathy, you have a question?
Oh, yeah. I've been trying now for a while, at Rawson with James to try to get the chlorella. And for some reason, I don't know, and Ibrahim's been asking Nikki, I don't know what's going on with chlorella now.
I don't know either. First time I heard about it. I didn't know that she wasn't producing it.
Yeah.
She got it from Asia, and from a good source. So she may have lost her source as the source changed their production methods. And now it's cooked or processed.
I have to find out.
Yeah, you have to call Nikki.
I have to. They haven't given me the number. Where's Ibrahim?
It's over to the rest.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, let me get the number of Ibrahim. For Nikki.
Do you have a question?
Oh, I wanted to mention one other thing. If everybody knows, because they're also putting in the vaccines of the bananas and the carrots, I heard. If everybody needs to know.
They're injecting them with what?
They were just injecting them with some, I don't know if it's a flu or virus or I don't know.
Impossible. Do you know how much time and work that would be? Do you know how quickly they would get caught?
But I heard it was Alex Jones. He said they're injecting them with something, the bananas and carrots.
Well, when they inject, which means they use a spray to inject it into the ground.
Okay.
They're not injecting with a hypodermic. Injection in agriculture means something different.
My question is not about food, just soaps and shampoos, detergents, dishwashing liquids. What's your recommendation?
I use BioClean All-Purpose Cleanser, BI-O-KLEEN. And
Whole Foods doesn't carry it anymore, so where do you get it?
I get it online, and it's so much cheaper. I'll buy like 6 quarts at a time, and I'm paying half of what I paid at Whole Foods.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry,
BioClean All-Purpose Cleanser.
I tried that a couple of times on my laundry, and I don't see any cleaning results. What does
it all the time?
You just use a capful and
I use the same amount as I would if it were a detergent. Yeah.
Well, you're using municipal water. I'm using well water. Maybe a difference there. You may have to use twice as much.
I see.
But it's made from the fats from oranges and grapefruits. Oil from the seeds. and it's 92% really organic matter. The other companies will use 70% organic matter, and the rest of it's more chemical. Of course, it's better than the regular Procter & Gamble garbage, but it's still not as clean as the BioClean.
Soaps and shampoos, would it have that?
No, what I do for soaps and shampoos, I use coconut cream.
Coconut cream.
Coconut cream that's off and fermented.
Not for shampoo, you use it.
Yes, I do. I use that for my shampoo. Pardon?
The older coconut cream.
Yeah, the old coconut cream has a fermentation in it. 80 years ago, 90% of all soaps were made with coconut cream.
It's better than using an egg. If I use the egg.
You can use an egg. That's the old way of shampooing. Use an egg.
But you have to wet your hair first.
Yeah, you also have to wet your hair before you use coconut cream, or else your hair is going to be very oily for a week. The way I do it, if I wet my hair first, it's only oily for a day. Do you have a question?
I do. I'm just curious. Is there anything you recommend for, I guess, just a little gut or pooch? I don't know if there's anything diet-wise.
Gut or pooch?
Yeah.
Milk.
Anybody as thin as you are needs to have a pooch. Okay? Because just like a baby has a pooch, if he doesn't have a little extra stomach, if the baby doesn't have that, they will never nutrify the body enough to grow properly. All skinny women, all models have them. They try to get rid of them, they never will. I tell people they need to have them regardless of their size.
So it's nutrifying.
Yeah, because if the toxins get into the system anywhere, you have no backup. You have no backup fat, so what happens? You get harmed. Louis, you have a question?
Yes, my question is, I tell people the argument that humans are the only animal, all animals in the wilderness that eat their food raw. We're the only animal that doesn't. And I've heard now on the argument about milk, the Sherrits will say, well, why is it human beings are the only animals that still drink milk after being weaned?
Because they're the only ones who have hands that can milk a cow. That doesn't mean when I hear that argument, I just want to spit up. You know, I've taken milk and I've given it to cows, to horses, to goats, to dogs, to cats, alligators, even chipmunks. Of course, raccoons will eat anything. But I've given them milk and they've eaten all of it. Every animal will eat milk. It's just who's going to let them suckle. We have overpowered the cow and the goat, and we get our milk. And that's why we're allowed to do it, and it's perfectly good. It's not harmful. Every animal would be eating it if they could.
Good argument.
Okay, do you have a question like
Yes, I do. If you were headed for an island tonight, you only could take two foods with you to live the rest of your life on, what would you grab?
You can't live the rest of your life on 2 foods.
You can, just show black.
Well, when I was on an island in the Philippines last November, I went through a lot to try to get to this tribe, and they just wouldn't let me. The government wouldn't let me get near any tribe. And I worked for 3 weeks, got very frustrated. I went into a spa to get a massage, and the receptionist there was about a 24-year-old woman with a baby. And she was very dark-skinned, and the baby was toe white as her shirt. And this baby was anemic. It hardly moved its mouth, moved its eyes. It basically had leukemia. So I said, what are you feeding that baby? And she said, well, the doctors at the hospital told me to feed it powdered milk. According to Pottinger and Howell, that created the most exaggerated extreme chronic diseases in animals, was powdered milk. Of all the processed foods in the world, that was the worst. So I said, not a good idea. So I had made a connection with the dairy on over another island, so I went over to that island and got about 4 liters of milk, brought it back, and the father was black. The father was so dark he was black, not African American, but Filipino. And that baby was white. In 3 days on the raw milk, the baby's color came out. The grandfather was so happy and so ecstatic. He said, I'm going to give you permission to go visit a tribe that I used to belong to. And he had left that tribe 32 years earlier when he was 20 years old. He's 53 this year, or just in 2008. So he tried to get permission. 5 days went by. He said, you're not going to get permission. He said, but I'm going to take you anyway. It's a 3-day journey. You're going to have to take a 4-wheel drive. So I had to rent a 4-wheel drive and a driver. You can't rent. They wouldn't let me rent. When I went to the budget rental there, which is the only rental they have, and I told them where I was going, they wouldn't rent me. And they sent out a grant to all of the other budget rentals over the entire Mindanao Island, which is the biggest island, which is as big as Texas almost, that they could not rent me a vehicle. So I had to rent it through another man, this Filipino man, so he rented the van, the 4-wheeler. So we went in the 4-wheeler, and then we had to take a boat, and then we had to do a little wading through water, and then hiking to get back to this tribe. And we picked up his cousin because his cousin had left the tribe only 7 years ago. So he still was familiar with the people that were there and everything, and the language. And we had 3 translators to get it back to me. So got to the tribe. They wouldn't let me go to the group. They don't have any mechanical anything. They don't know what a radio is. They don't know what a cell phone is. They don't even know what a nail clipper is. They have no industrial anything there. They build and make everything, including their clothes. They weave and do everything. And so they wouldn't let me into the tribe. So they brought six people out, 5 of them women and 1 man. And the man, they told me he was going to bring him out middle-aged. And he looked like he was in his early to mid-40s, maybe late 40s at the very most. He was 80 years old. 80 years old. So this is mid-age. So they live to about average about 145 years old in that tribe. They live on 3 foods. Fish that they catch every day, and coconut meat, and a fruit once in a while, either banana or mango. That shoots the hell out of the USDA's pyramid, doesn't it?
Do they eat the fish raw?
They eat the fish raw. They eat all raw.
Okay.
All raw. But what I thought was interesting is that I theorized that people who eat fish would be very thin. Because fish in me goes through like that. I'm hungry very rapidly and I stay slimmer when I eat fish. That just may be my digestive tract. Because they were all big and bulky and strong. It was fascinating, amazing. And you look at the Maasai tribe and the Fulani tribe, they're very thin and they live on red meat. Just my system, I just got a wrong analysis of it and conclusion. So you can be very strong and healthy on fish.
Maybe the coconuts, no?
In the coconut.
Maybe the coconut that makes them...
Help them with the fat, because coconut's 80% fat. 15% protein, 5% carb.
The meat is 80% fat?
Yeah.
So meat,
You can juice and rejuice that pulp in the coconut and you get fat out of it forever. What they do to keep getting the fat out of the coconut, they mix it with water. Juice it again, mix it with more water, juice it again. So they'll press it sometimes 15 times and they'll still get the fat out of it. Still get coconut cream.
So coconut cream is is the fat, that's the... Okay.
Mainly fat. And you got other things.
But that's the extract that you're talking about.
They don't extract it. They eat the whole coconut. Mature coconut meat.
So coconut cream is what part of the coconut? It's after...
It's mainly the fat.
But it's after they, quote unquote, juice it, after they... I guess I don't quite understand that.
You take coconut meat,
right,
and you grind it, and you put it through a juicer, and the pulp separates from a lot of the fat.
Right, okay. So if you eat it raw, then you eat the pulp too.
You can get some protein from that if you have good digestion. Obviously, they have better digestion than most people.
That was, okay, that was the question. Okay.
But the women, they eat, a half of a coconut, and then eat a whole coconut a day.
I have another appointment, so it really
Okay.
can stay as long as you like. And
Thank you.
close the door on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilson.
Okay, do you have a question?
Yeah. I admit I have good cheating and I'm not good eating it raw, but I noticed something, I mean, I can mix, but I noticed, can you speak up? Yes, with the vaginosis thing, when I've eaten honey and dairy, it's gotten worse. And I can't taste the pain. So I was thinking if I was to eat meat and some fat and juice for a while, would that be okay? Just that long?
Yeah, but you're detoxing that yeast infection.
I just can't handle
Yeah.
it.
But, just eat some dinner, have some dinner, slow it down, but just mainly eat butter and meat.
I have to have honey for a while.
Well, if you have like a little, pea-sized amount, it's not going to create that condition. Because it will help you digest. So just use a very small amount. Anytime a detoxification overwhelms you, there are things to do to slow it down, and most of the time there are things to do to slow it down without eating a lot of cooked foods. Now in the book, I say if you're an elderly person going through an extended horrendous detoxification for 3 months, eat a cooked meal of chicken. And everybody gets this concept, well, if I eat a cooked meal, I'm going to stop the detoxification. And they take it and extrapolate on what I've said. That isn't how it works. You want to slow down and stop the detoxification? It will. If you eat a lot of cooked food, it will stop the detoxification because your body's going to use its nutrients on handling that toxicity that results from the cooked food. It's like leukocytosis. When you eat cooked food, almost a third of your white blood cells leave the bloodstream and go into the intestinal tract to handle the toxicity. If you eat only a cooked meal, no raw food with it, that's what happens. If you eat a raw food with it, even a piece of fruit or a salad with a cooked meal, your blood will only lose about 15 to 20% of its white blood cells into the digestive tract instead of almost 60 to 70. So you have to take a look at that. Cooked foods are toxic, and they will overwhelm the body. So of course, an old detoxification where you have pain and discharge, it's going to go away while you're eating all the cooked foods because the body can't go back and start correcting the old stuff that's in the body. Can't get rid of it. Like if I go have antibiotics, it's going to stop. And then what I'm going to have is that insulin stay in my calves for my whole life. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to wait this out. I'm going to help regulate the amount of detoxification. This was so bad that sometimes I couldn't even walk. I was bedridden for 2 days once, in Philippines. And when I got here, and that was in the last few days, and then when I got here, I got the clay and the whey and everything I needed right away. I've been traveling every week. I go to another city. I do my consults, sit there every day and work, 12 hours a day. And I'm still working with that in that condition. Most people would be freaking out in the hospital, and the doctors would say, "Oh, you're going to lose your leg." How the frick do you know I'm going to lose my leg? Because you're scaring me with terror? That you have to learn. They got their training in an emergency ward. Their internship is done in an emergency ward. They want every doctor to come out of there with panic on their mind and in their hearts.
Now, what about the gangrene?
Pardon?
What about the gangrene that they said you might get? I don't get how gangrene comes into this.
Gangrene is a mold that your body can use to break down toxicity. It's a favorable thing unless you're so toxic and you're not taking care of yourself, not eating raw. The gangrene can take over a leg or take over a body part. But urine destroys, for some reason, urine destroys gangrene. I just didn't want to deal with the smell of it. If I were on my own and not traveling and working, I'd let the gangrene do its work. But I can't, because I just reek and stink. This probably would have been over weeks ago if I'd let the gangrene do it. Right now, somebody's too close to me, they can smell coconut cream and urine on my legs.
I just want to mention about the vaginal. I know in my bladder, I don't like pus.
Remember, pus is white blood cells arresting toxins and leaving the body. That's a wonderful thing. Of course, you have to replace the white blood cells just like you'd have to replace red blood cells. And that's all done in the bone marrow, and it takes a lot of nutrients and energy to do that. So it's best not to lose white cells, but the white cells are phagocytes. They eat toxicity, and they escort them out of the body. So pus is a good thing. Of course, doctors want you to believe just the opposite. They want you to be in panic about everything. Do you have a question, Alice?
I understand I wanted to know what your feelings were about something called diatomaceous earth. I understand it can take it as a supplement, but it can absorb heavy metals like mercury and like that. It's great quality, I don't know.
Again, it's somebody marketing some bullshit, though. Diatomaceous are singular cell crustaceans that lived for millions and millions and millions of years ago. They said they were the first shell organism. They are a very finite, tiny shell. You have to look under a microscope to see any shape or form. And what they do is they cook it to make it into a powder, and they use it as insecticides. People come up with all kinds of things for them. They treat it like a clay, and it is not a clay. Not a clay.
So are you saying it doesn't have any power to absorb heavy
It has the power to rip the cells out of your body. They use it as an insecticide. Why? Because it's glass to an insect. The insect breathes it or eats it, and it just rips them apart internally. That's how it works. Do you think that's a good thing for your cells to be subjected to glass?
So it's harmful.
Very harmful. You have to understand, a lot of these people get theoretical in their mind and say, I want to make $1 million. I got an idea. And they're not looking at, does this harm us or is it favorable? And that's the problem, with our schools. They don't teach you to be foresighted. They teach you to be hindsighted and to make the big dollar. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm David. I'm the person who emailed you. Thanks again for the invitation that you allowed me to come.
Oh, hey David.
Just for those that you know, thank goodness I'm okay, but my mother was diagnosed with cancer. She suffers from a lot of ailments that has kind of impacted the family, and through the person I mentioned to you, John Kretz, I've been reading your book, and I also bought the recipe book, which I think is amazing. So.
Good.
By the way, I was reading about asthma. I have asthma, and I've had a lot of raw fish in the last maybe 5 years, and I noticed my asthma was coming down, and I noticed that was something, so I just thought that was coincidental, but nevertheless, I wanted to throw that out there for you guys. I do have a consultation with you tomorrow. So my mother came out of the hospital yesterday.
Oh, good.
So as I was hoping and praying that she would come out of the hospital, my family is freaked out that she's out of the hospital.
Right.
So it's a funny scenario, but again, it's an amazing story so far because my mother only speaks Spanish. So everything I've read, I've translated to her, and she wants to do this. She's a pretty amazing woman. She's 68. She's extremely frail right now, and that's what concerns her the most. You mentioned the vomiting.
Right.
She has been vomiting up to 11 times at one point. It's come down.
Right.
She's been her 2 months of pure vomiting, but it's definitely lessened. And the one thing that scares us more than anything is dehydration and becoming weak to the point where they
You don't dehydrate, you die from starvation.
Exactly. And so I've been at the hospital. I was feeding her honey. And
Honey and butter?
Honey. I didn't do the butter because she was really not feeling comfortable with the butter. But the honey gave her a lot of energy.
Right.
Like quickly. And that was, she loved it, right? There was something different because she's been sucking on ice ever since she's been in there, because that's all they give her.
Right.
So when I gave her the honey, it was an alternative, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So she was really good. She started
honey and cheese, honey and butter.
She started trying cheese yesterday, so I was able to go to Boston.
Good.
And I gave her some cheese, and it's kind of like we're treating this behind our family's back, but she's in it with me, and I feel comfortable at this point. But again, and we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow and go into the details. But I wanted to just let you know she only speaks Spanish. I'll go in there and translate for her.
Well, the books are being translated into Spanish right now.
Oh.
Slowly.
Slowly.
Very slowly. Well, it'll go fast.
Yeah.
But I'm just, Raul called me this morning
Okay.
and said that it was a very good, accurate translation, but the idioms are not all right.
That makes a difference.
So, because the Spanish will use a lot fewer words than an idiom. So right now it's, and I don't care. I don't care if the idioms are all right, because the idioms are different from country to country in Spanish-speaking people. So when he gave me that piece of information, he's reading it again, and he's going to let me know what he thinks should be done. But he says it's completely accurate and it's beautiful. The translation. It's very understandable. So I just may not worry about the idioms, because from country to country the idioms change. And I can't afford to misunderstand things. So it's basically just having like Old English, this would be Old Spanish, type translation.
I'd be happy to read the Spanish version and give you feedback on it too.
Okay.
I've read that book anyway. But I do have a question. So she's struggling with having any bowel movements. They pulled her gallbladder out.
Okay, now listen to this. She's not eating, why should she have bowel movements?
Exactly. So she's thinking the same thing. But they're stuck on the concept, these are the doctors, that something is blocked.
It's their brains.
Fairly.
So nothing to ask
She
about.
had the cheese yesterday, for the first time she had the cheese, and she was vomiting, and the vomiting was different. It was no longer clear. It was a brown, darkish color, and I told her, I think that's good.
Those are the poisons that cause the cancer in the first place.
Okay, so that's what I told her, and so she's excited about it, because from what I read, I said, I think this is fine. I'll ask tomorrow when I'm there, and we'll go from there. But just commend you on what you've done. Thank you. It's been for me, because I'll tell you, I'm a breakdown right now. I keep going through this because, your mom's everything. And then you see her struggle, and then you struggle with your family saying, no, you've got to take her to a doctor. And I'm telling you, no, you don't. There's other alternatives.
It's a big battle.
So
it's like I couldn't even stop my own mother from getting a lumpectomy and the pinpoint radiation. Screwed up her lungs for 5 years. Well, she's never the same after that. She never played a game of golf again since that time. After the day she went for the pinpoint radiation was the last day she played golf. The day before was the last day she ever played golf. It's been 7 years now. That was her favorite game. Do you have a question?
Yes. We were talking about coconut water earlier. What percentage of that is actually water?
99.9%.
That's why when I drink H2O, I get really swollen, but when I drink coconut water, I don't. That goes against what you were saying.
Yeah, but you've already got a tremendous amount of water weight, so it may not react with you that way. But water will, straight water.
I stopped drinking water.
Good.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Oh, and I also wanted to comment, there's a bedding store called Norm's Foam and Fabric, and it's in Culver City. bigger question about mattresses.
Oh,
They make natural latex foam and
natural latex is an
Supposedly.
oxymoron. isn't it?
No, it isn't. No, you have a natural rubber. Rubber is a latex. Once it's transformed into a hard rubber substance.
They make custom mattresses?
Yeah, or toppers. I'm not sure.
That's true rubber.
Norms?
Norm's foam and
Norms
toppers.
does? Oh, wow. Well, there's lots of norms. There's several
It's in
of them.
Culver City.
Well, there are lots of them. So the one in Culver City?
So you just have to get them to get an organic, material to put on top.
Because foam
And batting.
batting, what?
Batting, you know what batting is?
No.
I'm a man, and you don't know what batting is? In sewing terms, that's when you put a layer of something in between to give it cushion.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Like in a quilt, that inner layer is batting.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, I guess we've gone through. What time is it?
5:15.
Could I just mention one thing before I go? My mother's
Hold on.
ready to go.
Well, wait a minute. You want to ask one question?
Some of your interviews, I got the impression that you were planning to publish more books.
Yeah, I got 4 in the works, but I got involved with so many projects, you wouldn't believe it. So, I got all this, I got my own work to do. I've got, I'm 867 emails behind. I've got 4 books that I'm working on at the same
Are you
time.
doing an addendum to the book?
And the DVDs. Finally, the DVDs out of my hands as of yesterday.
Yesterday.
So, it's
He has to know what that
So are
is.
you doing an addendum?
What's a DVD?
the DVD of that lecture workshop I did at UCLA.
Oh, wow.
So that's going to be out on DVD in about 3 weeks.
All right.
Finally, you're in it. A lot of you people who were there attended. You're in it.
Yeah.
So, are you
Allison
doing
is
an addendum?
You're in it.
Are you doing an addendum?
You weren't there?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, I thought you were there. Oh, that's right. It was another period fellow.
Well, are you doing an addendum to your book because you've modified the
A what?
An addendum or a
No, just more books.
because you've modified the Jews and the things you've
Just
done that are
it's
changed.
going to be in other books.
Okay,
Not going to modify anything anymore.
some more books. So
Just
the
new
more
books.
books will have the more recent.
Exactly.
Okay.
Recent information.
Yeah, I want to I work out as part of physical therapy, and I've been drinking whey a lot to work out. It's better if you make a sport drink out of it, with the cucumber pulp, the vinegar, the dairy cream, the coconut cream. The whole mixture that I just mentioned, but use a lot of cucumber in it. It'll be better for your skin, everything. Be a little bit more stabilized. I guess yours, in a way, was the workout for lactic acid. You see, it's still a concentrated substance. And with my athletes, they find it works much better if they mix that mixture. They put eggs in it. We had a whole day of